This audio tour highlights significant aspects of the studio used by the artists Karl Duldig and Slava Duldig nee Horowitz. My name is Eva de Jong Duldig, and I am the daughter of Karl Duldig and Slava Duldig nee Horowitz. My parents and I moved into this house in 1955, and after I married, they continued to live here for the rest of their lives. My mother died in 1975 and my father in 1986. After they died, the artist's studio was kept entirely intact, and all the sculptures, drawings, tools and equipment are displayed exactly as they were when my parents lived and worked here. My father built this studio not long after we came to live in this house, as he found it more convenient to work at home rather than at his previous off-site studio in Gardner. He supervised the location, design and construction of the building, and also worked hands-on to finish the pine lining boards and other detailing. When it was finished, he attached some of his favorite ceramic masks to the eaves outside. The building took account of the existing trees, and it faces south to take advantage of the light and the attractive garden setting. My parents not only worked in this studio, but also conducted art classes for private students here. Karl took pride in keeping the studio neat, as it also doubled as an exhibition space where prospective collectors could view completed work or commission new work. In 1970, a collector found a small sculpture on the window ledge and commissioned Karl to make an enlarged version for his beautiful garden in New South Wales. Called Echo, the enlarged bronze is now on permanent display at the McClellan Gallery in Langwarrin, while the original full-size terracotta working model is displayed in the new gallery of this museum. Similarly, a small maquette of Corre was first enlarged in terracotta and then eventually commissioned in bronze for the city of Glen Eira. A bronze Corre is in the sculpture garden, and it is one of the sculptures in the Bronze Editions catalogue, which enables discerning collectors to acquire Duldig sculptures. Many of the small maquettes on the shelves and window ledges were spontaneously modelled in clay in a few spare minutes. They were then fired in the electric kiln, which was initially purchased in 1944 to fire the Duldig's handmade pottery. My father turned cups and saucers and ramekins on the potter's wheel and decorated these with the colours and glazes on the shelves behind the kiln. Gift shops in the city sold Duldig pottery, and today some pieces occasionally come on the market. A few examples of Duldig pottery can be seen in this studio. The earliest sculptures in this studio were executed in Vienna in the early 1920s. They were completed while Karl was a student of the famous Austrian sculptor Anton Hanak. These sculptures were carved directly into the marble without any preliminary sketches or maquettes. The sculpture, Kneeling Nude, was selected by Professor Hanak to represent the faculty in the Jubilee exhibition of the Kunstgewerbeschule in Vienna in 1929. We also have the tools, the hammer, chisels and abrasives Karl used to carve these hard stone sculptures. When my parents and I left Vienna in 1938, these marble sculptures were among the works of art and other items left in our Viennese apartment. They were taken to Paris by my aunt, Aurélie Lenné, and, at great personal risk to her and her French husband Marcel Lenné, they were hidden in the cellars of her apartment house during the wartime occupation of Paris by the Nazis. Also hidden in Paris was this expressive mother and child sculpture, which was modelled in clay by my mother, Slava. Inscribed Vienna 1926, it was exhibited in the Künstlerhaus in Vienna and received critical acclaim. In its original clay state, it is very fragile, and its survival after so many decades and through so many moves is quite remarkable. You will have noticed many heads in the studio. Some of them are clay or plaster working models for commissioned portraits. High on a shelf are two fine plaster heads, Malay Boy and a portrait of Slava. Modelled in Singapore in 1939, they were brought with us on the ship when we were deported to Australia in 1940. The first bronze cast of the Malay boy was recently rediscovered in a private collection in Singapore and is now in the collection of the Singapore Art Museum. The head of Slava was transferred into marble by Carl, and he also cast it into bronze. It can be seen in the sunroom of the house. This sculpture is a portrait of Geoffrey Thorold. Mr. Thorold was the principal of Mentone Grammar School, where Carl was the art master from 1945 till 1967. It was done in 1949 and was eventually cast in bronze posthumously for the school collection. Malczynski, a world-famous Polish concert pianist, also sat for Carl. He came to Australia on an ABC concert tour in 1949. Carl took his clay and an armature to the Hotel Australia and completed the portrait in 3 sittings. On Thursday, the 4th of August 1949, the Herald published a photo of Carl at work on the head, and the caption reads, "Polish pianist Malczynski sitting for Carl Duldig, a Polish sculptor, in Melbourne today." The wonderful Dame Elizabeth Murdoch, who was a good friend, also sat for Carl, and this is her portrait. The consummate craftsman, Carl mastered the technique needed to work in many materials, including wood. Magna Mater, a major carving in wood, is in the National Gallery Victoria collection. This abstract sculpture is also carved in eucalypt. It was carved from a branch Carl salvaged from the bush. The iconic sculpture Moses was modelled in 1956, and it won the Victorian Sculptor of the Year award for Carl. The original terracotta was the first contemporary sculpture acquired by the National Gallery Victoria. Later, Carl obtained permission to cast Moses into bronze to a limited edition of 5. Carl said, and I quote, "Every material has its rules, and beware anyone who tries to break them. In this way, every material has its individual beauty that can be interpreted in its own way. Stone, wood, terracotta, bronze, ivory, and so on. The material and its handling are the most important aspects of sculpture and cannot be too highly regarded as its yardstick."